Is the engine in the current generation Nissan Frontier any good? And when I say current generation, I'm talking about the 2020 model year all the way up through somewhere around 2038 when we finally get the next generation Nissan Frontier. This is a 3.8 liter VQ38DD, and it is out of a 2021 Nissan Frontier with about 120,000 miles on it. Now, I hate that word about, but the person that I bought this core from told me it had about 120,000 miles on it, and I have no VIN. There's nothing stamped on this engine to let me do any kind of research, so I'm strictly going off of his word. The reason that I bought this engine from that guy is because this is the very first one of these that I've run across since I've been doing this. The very, very first one. Now, there's a lot of reasons why some cores are hard to find, and some cores like this are hard cores to find. The main reason is that there's a lot of demand and there's a high price on these cores, but this was really cheap, like almost $1 more than scrap price, which tells me that there's not a lot of demand in the remanufacturing world, which tells me that maybe these are pretty reliable. That would be the other reason that core values are really low, is that nobody needs it. So let's take this apart and see how good or bad it actually is. The VQ38DD produces 310 horsepower, 281 pound-feet of torque. It is an all-aluminum, dual overhead cam, direct injected, naturally aspirated V6. Now, the reason I say it that way is that it seems many brands, Toyota, have to put turbos on everything. Now, I'm not against turbocharged vehicles. I own plenty, but there is a time and a place, and it's not always the time and a place. And perhaps Nissan is onto something with keeping this just a simple, large displacement V6. They look like the same VQ that's been around for 25 years. The VQ40 is this engine's predecessor, which is based on the VQ35, which came out in the early 2000s. So Nissan has had a very long time to perfect these engines. So let's see if these things are actually perfect, except for this one has diarrhea on my floor. Yuck. The very first bit of information that I would like to find out is if this engine rotates, which will determine how easy it is to come apart. So it does. It doesn't feel great though. It does have plugs in it. I don't hear Uncle Rodney having a party. It does feel like I might be cutting through some rust though. I'm glad it should be easy to come apart. The next first thing I'd like to do is remove the spark plugs. Get a good look at those. The plugs do not look good. They are definitely the right plugs. They also look like they've been exposed to rain or moisture, which would coincide with the feelings I felt when I had this engine turning over. But yeah, that doesn't look good. It's like it's been chewing on some coolant perhaps. We'll see. The next thing I'd like to do is remove the lower intake manifold. I did not get an upper with it, probably because they needed to reuse their harness. I did notice that this has like a tumble control. I'm not sure what Nissan calls it, but let's go ahead and get this off. Oh, really? Blue? Didn't take too much. Okay. Well, there's the lower intake. See if, can I actuate this, I wonder? There we go. Look at that. That's much better than tumble flaps that always get carboned up like Chrysler intake manifolds from the late 2000s. Let's grab a flashlight and look down the intake ports. Well, it's definitely had some water sitting on the top of those valves, but there's quite a bit of carbon and a part of a harness. That's, don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to the amount of carbon buildup deposits from crankcase ventilation. This looks like about a 20,000 mile BMW engine, and I'm just joking. It doesn't look great though. Maybe a catch can would be a good idea. Before we start peeling the valve covers off, I'm going to get this coolant crossover pipe off and out of the way. And then some brackets. Ah, look at the room for activities. Next is peel off the right-hand valve cover. It does look like I'll need to remove the cam sensors to get the valve cover off. Definitely don't want to break those used cam sensors. Let's pry on that part that looks fragile. Oh, that's not oil. You know, sometimes we have to get pretty far into a teardown to see what's actually wrong, but here is a huge symptom of a potential problem. Now, I have seen this look this way if an engine was reined in and it got moved around a bunch. Probably not what happened here. It did get reined in, we can see that, but I think there's something else going on here. Before we peel off the left-hand valve cover, I'm going to remove the high-pressure fuel pump. If you're wondering why there's a foam cover on the high-pressure fuel pump and the direct injectors, it's for noise. They're basically sound diapers. Let's go ahead and remove the pump. Milky. Can I get the lifter out? Oh, I can almost get the lifter out. Yeah, that oil does not look like just oil. The lifter looks good though. Now we can peel off the valve cover. I think the reason this side looks so dirty and tons of oil spillage is literally spillage because the filler neck is right here for the oil. So somebody buy this guy a funnel, please. Did we expect it? Oh, it's oozing. We did not really expect any different, but that looks terrible. So this is what the inside of this looks like. Now, I will say something kind of interesting. It does look like there was a bit of varnish in here, quite a bit, but anytime coolant is introduced to the oil, obviously there's some other issue here, whether it's water or coolant, I don't know, but it can break up a lot of that varnish and get it into the oil and get it out of where it's sitting. So that's why you'll see little clean spots here. I bet this thing wasn't the best taken care of engine, and the only reason it doesn't look super sludgy is the introduction of coolant or water. Let's go ahead and get this manifold off, this water manifold. Okay. Oh, it's pulling the dipstick with it. Easy peasy. The next step is to remove the crank pulley. Nope, time for the weighted socket. These are Ingersoll Rand weighted sockets. They work very well, as you see. Now we're going to start unbolting the timing cover. There's just a couple bolts that hold this together. We've gone from our 10mm headed bolt now to 12s. There are some bolts at the bottom that go up from the pan. We're going to go one step up to the 14mm bolts. Take the extension out. These are tight. Let's get the big impact. I think that's all the bolts. I don't think I need to take any of the pulleys or tensioners off. Oh, we're getting somewhere. We're just going to give it some taps. The top is loose, but it sure is acting like there's something else holding it. I'm going to take that big bolt out of the center, out of that tensioner, just in case. No, it definitely didn't matter. Okay, we are leaking some more schmoo, but that side looks pretty freed up. This side is getting there. Try to be careful doing this because I don't want to mar up the surface of the timing cover. All right, timing cover's ready to come off. Well, the entire inside of this timing cover is coated in that coolant oil milkshake that we don't like to see on this channel. And in my experience, this is way too much to be a rainwater situation. This is not rainwater. This is coolant and oil mixed, or water and oil if they didn't run coolant. And there's a couple different ways that you can mix the two. It can be oil coolers like that. It could be the internal water pump that's inside the timing cover. Now, normally this would be a no-no, but these have proven to be fairly reliable. I can count on one hand, on actually two fingers, the number of these that I've seen fail and leak a bunch of coolant into the crankcase. It doesn't mean this isn't one of them. It just means that unlike... Wait a second. What have I said? Oh, no! Oh, okay, three fingers. Wait, is it three fingers? I don't know what I'm doing here. Well, that's that's unfortunate. Yeah, as I was saying, there's more than one way for coolant and oil to mix, and it looks like the water pump has failed and leaked coolant into the crankcase. The real question is, how bad is the rest of this engine? At this point, it is time to start taking the timing system apart. We're going to take this primary chain off first. The secondary chain will come off after that. Let's go ahead and get the tensioner out. So that's under some tension. Let me just look the other way. The amount of pig mat I'm going to use in this video is going to be a lot more normal. The amount of pig mat I'm going to use in this video is going to be a lot higher than normal, I have a feeling. Next, let's go ahead and get the timing guides removed. Now we can pull the timing chain off. What a chain. Look how wide that is. Now we're going to go right for the jugular. Let's take a look at that water pump. I think it's over. I think it's done. This is the culprit. I think it's been a while since we've had a water pump in that poor of condition. They just don't make them like they used to. Let's remove the deceased water pump. Ooh. I could have given this to my kids when they were young. This thing is absolutely destroyed. Unfortunately, this ruined the engine. Well, we don't know that yet. We don't know if the engine is ruined or it's just got a bunch of that slime throughout, but this is definitely one way that coolant and oil can mix. And look at the wear, look at the wear on this thing from the angle. This thing is wrecked. That's not all it wrecked. Look at the damage to the block. That is unfortunate. That can create some pretty big issues with cooling systems. This is very deep here. That block is going to go into the scrap bin because of that. That's unfortunate. Look at the gray coolant. That's all the suspended aluminum from that water pump grinding away at it, since it kind of cocks the shaft at an angle. That's not what I meant to say. It kind of pushes the shaft at an angle and it starts to grind away at this when the bearings in the pump go. And, well, also wears the seals out, and that's how coolant ends up in the crankcase. Well, timing guides have some decent amount of wear, and the previous generation, especially the early VQ40s, Definitely had timing guide problems. I'll be curious to see if these fail at the same rate or less. Probably less, because the later VQ40s, I believe, last a lot longer. Next, let's get the cam gears and the secondary chains out of the way. Okay. I need to figure out how to hold that still. It doesn't like it. Yeah, that was tight. Yeah, I didn't drop it. It's fine. Next, let's remove the inner timing cover. I'm gonna run out of bolts at some point. Is that the point now? Am I there? I have one solenoid to get out here. And now we can get one of the oil pan bolts out, the last one that holds this on. And now we can start prying this timing cover off. This one has a lot better places to pry. It doesn't matter because I feel like there's still bolts holding it in. There is. I bet it's a lot easier now. I wonder if the pan goes into this, in which case we may have to drop, I may have to pull the pan. Nah, it's just an O-ring. And there's the inner timing cover. Now it is time to cram the cam cramps loose so that we can take a look at those cramshafts. Well, I had to use a little bit of brake clean to spray out all the muck, but there's definitely signs of damage to some of these journals. They're not terrible. I expected worse, I'll be honest with you, because water is not the best lubricant, especially at temperature. Let's go look at those cams and caps. So the cams, they have damage. Whether they're useful or not, or whether they're usable, I should say, that remains to be seen. I'd say the worst of the damage comes right here. These journals here. It could be worse. I've seen them much more torn up than that. Actually, it's probably the worst there and there. It's not great. Gotta get this out of the way. It's the only thing tying the two heads together at this point. Let's get these head bolts cracked loose. Okay, let's see what's under head number one. There's the head gasket. It actually looks really good. But really good could not describe the rest of this. First thing you notice is a bit of rust and corrosion. I bet that has nothing to do with the condition of the engine before it was set outside, but the fact that it was actually put outside. Pistons are pretty clean, but not perfect. I don't see any damage outside of corrosion here. Let's go look at the cylinder head. The head looks pretty good too. It's clearly been wet. There's corrosion Looks like at the edges of the valves right there too. I don't see any head damage. I'm unsure as to whether I'll save these heads or not. The cam caps are, they're not terrible though. Of course, we have a pretty good idea of what this test result is going to look like, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. I think it's okay. On to the right-hand cylinder head. Let's go ahead and cram these cam cramps loose. So I sprayed this side down too, and it seems that this side may have fared a little bit better. Still not too tore up. Let's go look at the cams. The caps do have some wear. It's not bad. It's just not perfect. I'm not sure what the market is on these. This one's pretty rough. I'm really not sure what the market is for these yet, being that this is the very first one I've gotten in. Let's go ahead and crack these head bolts loose. Whoa, that one was tight. What's underneath head number 2? More rust. The head gasket. Will you be quiet? Stop dropping buckets. Head gasket. Stop. Looks good. More of the same. This is unrelated completely to why this engine is bad. I mean, it is another reason that this engine is bad, but this is from being rained in. It's probably sitting outside with no intake on it. And that's what happens. But I don't see any marks on any of the pistons. It doesn't look like any of them made contact with the cylinder head, so I don't know. Just poor care of a core. Cylinder head looks pretty normal for something with head moisture in it. There's a water line right there. But it doesn't look terrible. Just crusty. You know, I still have to do the science test. I have to. It's just the rules. It passed. Nobody's surprised. Let's turn this thing upside down and drain the ick. I'm assuming there's going to be some in here. I could be wrong. It really wasn't too bad. Let's go ahead and unbolt the lower oil pan. Just got to give this a couple boops. That's pretty glued on there. Oh, we're moving. Well, that's gross. I don't know if I see any chunks of metal in here. There's some stuff in here that doesn't look promising. Oh, at first I was going to tell you how I usually don't see a bunch of bearing damage if it's caught early, but let's zoom in here. That is bad. So we're going to see some damage as this thing comes apart. How bad it is, that remains to be seen. Before I remove the upper oil pan, I would like to remove the stop oil filter. It's a little bitty guy. Nissans typically use really small oil filters, so I got the smallest pair of pliers I could find. And we're going to cut this open, and we'll look at this at the end of the video. Time to zip the upper oil pan bolts out. Well, you thought I was going to go back to front? Come on now. They give you places to pry. Oh, that's not pretty, is it? It's pretty disgusting is what it is. Well, here's our oil pump. One thing I noticed though, our tensioner, that's not supposed to do that. This has also got a bunch of gritty stuff on it right here. Should I touch it? Maybe it's just bubbly. The rest of this looks pretty horrendous. This doesn't look like a very well cared for engine, and then with the introduction of coolant, well, things just went downhill. Inside of the oil pan, you can see there's some cleaner oil, or I should say less coolant contented oil dropping out of the oil cooler. Let's remove the oil pickup first. I don't know if you guys can tell, but this engine has a certain aroma that is less than pleasing. It's not as bad as I've smelled some other engines. Go ahead and remove the windage tray. Go ahead and get the oil pump removed. Or should I call it the auxiliary water pump? Let's go ahead and dismantle this oil pump. Uh-oh. I think I got them all. Oh, yes. Look at what was in the pump. Vane style pump. Oh, the shaft does come out. Well, I'm gonna waste all of my brake clean and clean this up so you guys can take a look at this. Somehow, the oil pump seems to have fared pretty well. There's not a lot of unusual wear or anything weird. This all looks pretty good. The housing looks good. I don't think this thing ran very long. Next, we're going to unbolt the bed plate. I kind of was on the fence about whether to do rods and pistons next for bed plate, but it'll be a lot easier once the bed plate's out of the way. Ooh, these are tight. I'm going to break these loose manually. A lot of times the impact won't get those out because there's a lot of spring tension in these bolts. Ooh. Well, this ain't going too good. I broke the head off of this bolt with the impact. All of these are starting to round off. I only got one of these out. I don't know what the deal with that is. I don't know why that is. The bolt is not right-hand thread. There's one of the bolts right there. It's left-hand thread, standard thread. Ripped the head off of one of these. I got the right socket. It's an E14. Tried every socket I got here. See if maybe I had a worn-out socket. It doesn't matter what. These are all going to be a problem. It's going to rip the head off of it. Let's get the induction heater and see if we can get anywhere with that, and then we'll have to figure out how we're going to get that off. I got a welder, so I'm not too terribly scared. See what happens here. This better start smoking quick. Now it's breaking the head off. Wow. I don't know what to do here. We got to get this apart. I didn't see any Loctite on that bolt that came out, so it's probably just the flange. I may have to drill a hole in every single one of those flanges. That's going to take a minute. Not even flinching. That's going to break the head off. Unbelievable. It's going to break the head off, I guarantee it. Boom. Ripped it right off. I can't not take this apart. Alright, I think I found the secret. So, I used a chisel to chisel the edges of this. And then I can zip them out. We're going to try that once more. I'll show you what I did. And this block is already junk, so. It's just a little bit of work. I don't know why. All right, let's just chisel on them all and see what happens. That's bad. That one's rounded off. That one broke off. This is almost a lost cause, guys. These are so deeply bedded. That is wild. So far we have 3 that I'm gonna have to weld giant nuts to. That came off with parts of the block. Hey. I'm gonna have to cut all these off. It's gonna be terrible. All right, well, I used a Sawzall to make a little slit in it there. And now I'm gonna use an extractor that I'm gonna hammer onto it right here. And we're gonna see if that works. It probably won't, but we are going to try. Oh, I'm listening to it release. Well, I definitely closed the gap up by doing this. No, that's not gonna work. I need to hammer a socket on there or weld something to it. I just assumed that the extractor would fit perfect, and perfect is not in the vocabulary of that extractor. Oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of funny. A little bit of brake clean in there. It's just cleaning it.
Free heat.
If this doesn't work, it should have. Yeah, I just got to do this 8 more times. We're getting them all out. I don't care. Wow. Ah. I guess I didn't have good adhesion. Not good enough anyway. Yep. That is 2. We just have a lot more to go. This is my exceptionally dumb plan. I slotted them. I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver. No, I'm just kidding. I slotted them to kind of break the seal. I'm going to take a hammer and the chisel and kind of pinch them together. And I'm going to hammer a nut onto them, weld it, and hope. That's all I got. Well, they're all chiseled or pinched, whatever you want to call it. And then I've got nuts. I got everything cleaned. I'm going to weld it all together, and fingers crossed, guys. What's next? This one? Sure. That is the sound of success. What? Did that work? Look at that. This is working pretty good. Yes. All right, we just have one more. The final stuck bolt. I don't want to call it victory yet. All right, now I will. Heckin' yes. That is almost as good as getting a burned up Miata to run. Almost. This is not what a proper machine shop would do. And this is not what someone that would be putting this engine back together would do, because they'd get to this point and they just go, nope, time for a new one. This better just pop right off with ease after what we just went through. Oh wait, there's a jacking bolt. Why, thank you, Nissan. There's several of them. Will this work?
Oh yeah.
All right, that feels great to get that off. Let's go ahead and turn this over so we can start getting the rods and pistons out of this. Or not. Yes. There we go. Can't quite get to those yet, so we'll get the front 4, and then we'll get the rear 2 once we can turn the crank over. Well, this does not have fractured rods. They are machined. With dowel pins, of course. I think I can get the last 2. And now we can pluck the crankshaft out. And now we hopefully can push these out of their bores. Look at all that carbon shooting off of there. We have a few things to look at, so let's get right into the bottom end. The rod bearings are all damaged, and, well, water is not a good lubricant. So are we all surprised? No. This definitely looks the course for improper oil, and that's exactly what it had. It's pitted, it's got a bunch of damage. So even if there wasn't a block situation with the impeller, and even if you could just put a water pump on it, this would have been a problem. Now let's get into the rods and pistons. Now I sprayed these off with brake clean so that we could see what they look like, and then the rest of them are how they came out of the block. The pistons, they have a little bit of wear. It's not terrible. These honestly look reusable if someone were daring enough. Full floaters, they look pretty standard VQ to me. It's really hard to judge too the ring condition. I'll zoom in a little bit. The reason it's hard to judge is because when you have a bunch of moisture and rust, it attracts a bunch of other stuff, and it can look way worse than it actually was before water or moisture was introduced. So they're ugly, but it's hard to cast blame on engine design. The rings are nice and thick. They are relatively freed up in their land of the rings, but lots of moisture does bad things. Let's get to the main bearings. These are much worse, and that's not good either. Water, again, very poor lubrication, and clearly there was some debris running through this thing. Speaking of debris, I have completely coated the crankshaft in all the metal you could think of, from welding and grinding and cutting, but the crank came out. We got the crank out. There's a little bit of damage here. I think this would polish out. I have no idea if this is valuable at all. I don't know if people are going to use parts from these engines. They didn't really do that with the VQ40 and any other vehicles. So I wouldn't suspect that the 38 would be anything of an upgrade for any of the other displacement engines. And the oil filter, well, let's just say whoever owned this vehicle did not do a very good job at taking care of their vehicle. I bet that before the water pump incident, This thing was a sludgy monster. Let's take a look at the bores. There's really not much to look at. Significant corrosion, and it doesn't matter anyway because this thing is junk. And I'll show you the damage done to the water pump area here in a minute. All of these bores, I mean, they probably were nice before it was out in the rain. It is unfortunate. Now, if the rust and moisture were on the bottom side of the pistons, I would say that's just from the coolant sitting in the crankcase, but that is not the case here. It's on top, which means, well, especially since I got this without a intake, it was rained in. Now, here's a better look at how deep that groove is. That is very deep. Now, you could put a water pump back on this and it might work, or it may have trouble moving coolant and it may have overheating issues that you could never solve. This is not going to be your average outro for me. Usually I film my outro immediately following the teardown, but in this case I had something else going on, like dinner. And here we are a couple of days later, which has actually given me some time to kind of collect and organize my thoughts on this engine and the teardown. And the very first thing that I want to convey to everyone watching this is that this is only one engine. I am kind of an automotive end-of-life specialist, and I usually see more broken things than your average guy out in the repair field, and usually when I do find it, it's broken worse than many people see out in the field as well. And this is the first engine that I have crossed paths with, and this is the failure mode that it had. I haven't torn down 2 or 4 or 100 or 300, certainly not enough to establish a trend. And I guess what I'm trying to say is if you own a new Frontier or you're looking to buy one, I wouldn't let this teardown make you panic and make some rash decisions because you haven't finished watching this outro. I know that sounds terrible, but anytime I see something for the very first time, I do what many of us do, and I go to see if I'm the only one. I hop on the internet, I look at Identifix, I looked at the Frontier forums, I went on the Frontier Facebook pages, and I did expect to see a couple other instances where this happened. And I did not find 1 or 2 instances. In fact, I found a lot of them. In fact, so many of them that they don't make numbers that high. Maybe they do. Regardless, there were a lot of people. Some people were Nissan techs that have personally condemned several engines from water pump failure, causing catastrophic engine damage, needing full long block replacement. That should scare the pants off of a lot of people. This isn't really widely talked about yet in the news or anywhere else. And there aren't really any videos on the subject that I could easily find. But I did find one video where a guy was trying to calm the fears of those that have bought or are looking to buy one. And he did so by comparing the labor times to replace the water pump on the VQ38. And he compared the VQ38, the new Frontier, to the oil pump belt on a 3-liter Duramax and the oil pump belt on a 5-liter Coyote. Now, also keep in mind, I've torn down multiples of those and we have yet to see a failed belt. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I've crossed paths with a lot of those engines and none of the failure modes with those have been the oil pump belt. And I don't really think that's a fair comparison. I like to compare apples to apples, not apples to trees and rocks. And I would say the closest apple to the VQ38 is going to be the VQ40, this engine's predecessor, the 2005 through 2019 Frontier, and then there's some Pathfinders and Xteras early on. And I looked up the book time for water pump replacement on one of those engines. And if you were to take your 5 to 19 4-liter in for water pump replacement, you could expect to pay 2.6 hours of labor to get that fixed. So with parts and labor at about a $200 an hour average, which seems to be the national average, you'd be paying about $700 for a water pump replacement, which I know it sounds like a lot of money, but it's kind of palpable compared to other repairs. And as well, personally, I've seen a lot of VQ40s. That is usually not how they fail. Water pumps do go bad on those, but usually they leak out the weep hole on the driver's side of the block. There is a weep hole in the side of it, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now, if you own a 2020 Frontier and later, and you wish to have your water pump replaced, you are going to pay 11 hours of labor. That should make you so mad, and I'll tell you why. So the big reason for that disparity is that this engine's predecessor, the VQ40, has an access panel in the outer front timing cover. You remove 3 or 4 10mm headed 6x1.0 bolts, you take the tension off the chain, and you can replace the internal water pump. Yes, it's that easy. On this engine, as you guys may have noted, there is no such access panel. The beam counters have won again, and I don't know why they chose this corner to cut, because it is a giant middle finger to Frontier owners and potential Frontier owners. And if anything, Nissan needs all of the good press it can get, and this is not good. This is terrible. They had something that was much easier to service, and they got rid of it to save what? 30 cents? Maybe? I don't really know. Maybe it's a couple bucks a unit. Regardless of that, a couple bucks a unit is a difference between a $1,900 disparity between its predecessor and this one's repair bill with a water pump. That is so disappointing. So incredibly disappointing. Now, I did look up the water pump from the 4-liter versus the 3.8, and they are different parts, but they are very similarly designed. They both have a weep hole in the same spot. And usually that's the first way a water pump would fail, is that they leak out of the weep hole and you can smell it. There's coolant loss. Maybe you get low enough where it starts to overheat. But usually they drip down on the differential, or if it's two-wheel drive, in that same area. But in this case, we looked at this engine and there were no dried crusties from dried out coolant on that driver's side of the block, which means the seals didn't leak first. The bearing failed, which tells me, because the parts are not the same, although they are similar, there is something fundamentally different about the bearing situation in the water pump on the VQ38 versus its predecessor. So did they cheap out? Did they put a cheaper water pump in it? I mean, the replacement costs are very similar for those parts, but that usually has very little to do with manufacturing cost in my experience. Either way, this should be maddening, and I'm so disappointed. Aside from that, Nissan has made some really good trucks over the years. The previous generation Frontier was a fantastic truck. The first generation Frontier was good. The hardbody was an excellent truck. The D21, the 720, and all of the Titans outside of the Cummins-powered one, all really good trucks. Nissan needed something to lean on to be their reliable vehicle, because a lot of their other cars have not made such good press in that fashion. And I don't know that the Frontier is going to be it at this point. You know, if someone asked me what I think of them, I think my opinion has changed after this teardown. I'm not happy about this. I had really high hopes for Nissan. Now, as far as the debauchery with the main cap bolts, this is kind of a VQ thing. This is not just the 38 or any of the other engines, it's all of them. I don't know what I could have done differently. I had the right socket on it. I had a fresh socket on it. I maybe had something to do with the coolant oil mix. It was literally the flange of the bolt that was the problem, and not the threads. Just an improper spec tooling, if you ask me. Anyway, we got it apart, and I would also like to note, if you work on your engine the way I worked on this engine here today, it probably won't run when you're done. But I knew that this engine wasn't going to be backed together, so I kind of pulled out the fastest methods to get that stuff apart. One other thought before I end this, and that is, there are a couple reasons why core engines can be cheap. And one of them is that they're plentiful and there's low demand. I guess that's 2 reasons. But another one is that if they fail catastrophically, or if they fail, they are not rebuildable. And in this case, the damage to the water pump housing area makes that block trash, regardless of what the bores look like. So that's a bad one. Anyway, I bought this thing to sell parts. I will sell any of the parts out of this except for the bad water pump, because I'm going to go try to track down a VQ40 so that I can compare the two, maybe press them apart to see what the differences are. There may be a follow-up video on a teardown. Imagine that. I really hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.